we're in this weird time now where a lot of people like have their coins down and they're like, oh, like things suck. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, are you guys watching what's happening? Um, there's still a lot of work to do. And you know, the smart wallet came out of that first on-chain summer where we were like, okay, we've got a cheap chain, but it's still too hard for people to get on chain. You know, we did these on-chain summer activations of like use base, and you know, it was way too hard for people to use it. They had to go on the side quest and install a wallet, and it was especially painful that if you already had a Coinbase account, it was still so hard for you to use it. You were sort of there wasn't any advantage to you.
Okay, awesome. So, hi everyone. Today we have Wilson from the Base team, and we're going to be talking about what they've been doing at Base around Smart Wallet, on-chain kit. And I kind of want to start very quick actually, because I feel like the growth of Base has been very impressive, like quickly becoming one of the top L2s in a short amount of time. So, Wilson, can you give us an overview of how kind of like what's behind the impressive growth in your opinion?
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for having me today. Maybe I can give a little bit of backstory as well to my joining Base, because that sort of colors my perspective on it. So I joined Coinbase in 2020. Worked as an engineer there for like 2 years, and partway through, I guess, close to 2 years. After the first year, I actually went on paternity leave. I sort of got more into Solidity development, and in let's see, 2021, you know, things were starting to pick up, and I was like, hey, you can't really do much with your NFTs. Like, wouldn't it be cool if you could get a loan against your NFTs? And of course, this became a very commoditized product, but at that point, not many people were doing it. And so I sort of started playing around with this NFT backed loans idea. And Coinbase at that time was also trying to do more on chain stuff. And so some people at Coinbase found out about it and they were like, hey, do you want to work on this at Coinbase? And so I started working on it at Coinbase. And, you know, around the same time as this happened, I think you've probably heard Jesse talk about him like sort of working for a while at Coinbase and then taking a break, trying to decide if he wanted to leave or stay. And he sort of decided to stay, and then he was really going to lean into like on-chain stuff. And so that's sort of when Jesse and I first started working together, where, you know, there was sort of this mandate of like, Wilson's working on this thing, we got to figure out how to support him. And Jesse sort of became the DRI for supporting me. And we worked on it. We went through a lot of runs with it, and we decided ultimately this product is probably going to do best outside of Coinbase. And so I left Coinbase with a team of 3 people and worked on this NFT backed loans protocol. It was called NFT Pawn Shop originally, and then it was called Backed. But I sort of stayed on as an advisor to Coinbase, and Jesse and I would talk like every couple weeks. And so, you know, Jesse was figuring out what sort of the on-chain future of Coinbase looks like. And he and I would talk every couple of weeks. I was trying to figure out my protocol. He was trying to figure out his stuff. And we'd kind of just like compare notes and support each other. Um, and then they sort of started to find their footing with Base. And he was like, you know, I think we're going to do an L2. And at first I was kind of skeptical, you know, does that make sense? And then I kind of like, I got the vision. I got why it made sense. And, you know, the NFT markets were down. I was kind of not super inspired by trying to convince my friends to take leverage on their NFTs. And Jesse was sort of making increasingly urgent pitches that I should really come back to Coinbase and work on Base. And so in June of 2022, 2022, what year is it? I think it was June 23. Because I left Coinbase in April 22. Yeah, so I left Coinbase April 22. I came back June 23. We decided just to shut down that project, and I like didn't take any time off. You know, they were like, "We need you right now." Like, I didn't even like do the Coinbase onboarding. They were like, "You have to like start working on chain summer stuff right now." And so I sort of came in to help get like the on-chain summer site working and make sure that I was going to work, and also just figure out what that launch looked like. And so I ended up doing working with Kabir on a lot of the grant stuff, doing that through Prop House and figuring out exactly what that looks like. And so it was a very busy time, and you know, I'm reluctant to try to describe like what exactly has worked. But I think there's a few things I can say. You know, I think Base works, lives or dies to the extent the sort of community lives or dies. Base is a community project, And I think that Jesse has done a great job of inspiring people, of trying to articulate why we're here, why does on-chain matter, and creating a really positive environment. We talk about being based and just like working hard, doing the right thing, taking care of each other. And I think that really shows through. And I think that that means a lot to people. And so I think people have been drawn to that energy. I think a lot of it is also just like people have worked like so freaking hard on our side. It's just like sometimes you look at things of like, why did this work? Why did this not work? And sometimes you just like, this team outworked, the team that, didn't do as well. And there's just been so much effort and so much hard work. It's pretty crazy. And the final thing I would say though is just like strategy is underrated. And it's not any secret, right? Like we published our 2024 strategy of like smart accounts at the center of the economy. Like, what are our strategic pillars? What are we growing? And that came out of like a lot of debates that we had, getting in a room together and like hashing it out. And it can sort of seem obvious at the end of it. Like, oh yeah, okay, these are the 5 things you're going to work on. But you start with a list of 20 things and you have to make a lot of trade-offs. And I think that we benefit a bit from Coinbase's structure and the maturity of Coinbase in forcing us to do some quarterly planning, do some annual planning. And I think that, it can be challenging. I've operated startups before, and a lot of times startups, you never pick your head up enough to sort of make a strategy. You're always sort of solving the next problem. And so I think part of it is just like, we have a strategy. We have and I think that the strategy is working. We have a strategy for how we're doing these things. It's not perfect, but I think it can seem obvious in retrospect, like, oh, of course it's going to work. But I think, a lot of people were ready for Base to just be like another, a failed project from a big company that sort of didn't really get what it took to succeed in this new space. And people forget how likely that outcome was. So I do think it's pretty surprising that we've got here. And I think it's a lot about just the community, the people who have decided to bet on us and work with us. It's about the work ethic of the team inside Coinbase and the team outside Coinbase working on Base. And yeah, I think just like having a strategy, like a set of a plan for how you are going to grow it, and then succeeding or failing on that plan.
I love how this is so much more human than I was expecting in terms of the answer to this question. Like basically, you got like the right humans. You got the right strategy, and you guys worked really hard to make it happen. From my angle, kind of looking more at the technology or even like the user experience. If we think of like basically we're ready. We are ready for users to come on chain. Yeah. And the things that allowed for this were like L2s. So before this, it was way too expensive. It was way too slow. Now it's cheap and fast. Then the second elephant in the room was you could lose your private key, or your private key could get leaked and you'd be gone forever or swept forever. And now we have smart contract wallets. Yeah. And those smart contract wallets can just be a fingerprint, passkey, signature. If you lose it, it can be recovered by some kind of intermediary. And then also, like on top of that, like my bank account can come right into my Coinbase, can come right into my smart contract wallet. So like the ramp is there, the network is there, the wallet is there. Like basically, if you are building on chain, like now is the time where we are completely ready for users. And this is the mainstream, like the mainstream user experience is basically going to be, oh, you want to bring $10 on chain? You hit the button and you have exactly $10 on chain. And that user experience is so important psychologically. Oh, you want to buy something, just do a little fingerprint and you bought the thing and it's in your wallet. Yeah. And so like, I guess there's gas sponsorship there is maybe one little thing that I forgot to add there. But this is it. Like, this is what we've been waiting for like 7 years after like using Ethereum for the first time and getting excited about it. Finally, all of these things are here. Yeah. Am I missing anything in that view? Don't you agree that we're about there? Like, is there something else missing that still needs to be there? Or am I too optimistic, or am I hitting it on the head here?
No, I mean, I'm highly aligned. I think that I made a video in like July for our team of sort of describing how I see the next 6 months. And yeah, my frame was sort of like, we're in the end game, like all these things that we finally talked about, all these ways in which crypto was going to be better, but wasn't actually better yet. These are sort of coming true. And I think that it's weird because there's sort of a tale of two cities where a lot of people thought that mainstream adoption meant people are going to come and buy my bags, but actually mainstream adoption for a lot of people just looks like better user experiences online, faster checkout, more ownership, better self-sovereignty. And it's these subtle things that make a difference. And, I'm not totally in the camp of like, let's make crypto invisible. You shouldn't know that any of it's there. I think it's about finding the right places to show the UX and the value that it's providing to that user. But yeah, I think it's sort of, we're in this weird time now where a lot of people like have their coins down and they're like, oh, like things suck. And I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, are you guys watching what's happening? There's still a lot of work to do. And the smart wallet came out of that first on-chain summer where we were like, okay, we've got a cheap chain, but it's still too hard for people to get on chain. We did these on-chain summer activations of like use Base, and it was way too hard for people to use it. They had to go on the side quest to install a wallet, and it was especially painful that if you already had a Coinbase account, it was still so hard for you to use it. You were sort of there wasn't any advantage to you, having a Coinbase account because it was sort of living in these two different worlds. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe I can talk a little bit about the smart wallet backstory and how that came up. It was kind of interesting. I think that we first started looking at it around the sponsorship angle. Coinbase had done some gas sponsored experiences, and it was sort of in the relayer, I think it's 2771 approach. And it was sort of this like whack-a-mole approach of like, you kind of have to do these bespoke relayer gas sponsorship things set up. And we saw ERC 4337 and we were like, let's bet on this infrastructure for, sponsored transactions. It's going to be more scalable for all of Coinbase. And initially just that was kind of the thing. And, I was talking to Jesse and like looking at our Q4, goals of in 23. And I was like, we're just like missing something. Like we're missing, it's not exciting enough. We need something a bit bigger. And he was like, well, maybe we should do some like contracts of the 4337 stuff. And I kind of started looking at like the smart account type things. And the more I looked at it, I was like, I don't really think that we did end up writing our own contracts, but I was like, I don't think that the contracts are what's missing. Like there's a lot of teams doing good contracts. The problem is it's just like, nobody's really put these pieces together in a way that feels super easy for users to take advantage of all these amazing things you can do on chain. And, I wrote a doc in September of 23 of like smart wallets of the future. And here's what we're going to do about it. Here's how we're going to move to have a product in this space. And the comparison I made then was that, you sort of have this analogy to like Bitcoin early on, where you have the tech people can see these amazing things that are possible, but it's so hard for the common person to experience it. And I think that that's like Coinbase's business, is like bridging this gap of like taking like what all the tech people see as the future and making it accessible to everyone. And it's also sort of funny that in a way, Coinbase's business has always sort of been key management, right? Like, it was custodying your keys, and now we're sort of in the key management business again, but we're sort of working on making more and more of it self-custody. I'll have another thought, but I'm sure there's questions already, so I'll pause there.
Well, I think of early days when I was experimenting with user experience. I had the same feelings about where it needed to be. And I sort of started with the customer and worked backwards and made things like burner wallets where you have like private keys.
Right, I remember your burner wallets, yeah.
Or we used like side chains where we could sponsor them for like pennies. Yeah. But these things are inherently unsafe. And I think that what's happened is like we weren't comfortable with having users use things that were this unsafe. Yeah. And so these things are all filled in now. The L2s are there and they're backing to Ethereum. The smart contract wallets are here and they're using signatures. They can do gasless 4337. I think that maybe one thing that is missing is you guys aren't fully decentralized yet, right? Like there's the process of taking the L2 all the way the distance, and you guys still have a little bit to go with that. I think in my mind when I'm thinking of all of the things,
I think we have a little bit to go and to catch up with like some of the other OP stack chains. I think we have a long ways to go in terms of where we want to go and where some other chains are already. We want to get to like a multi-proof environment, and I think there's a lot to do there. I think that I think it's still too hard to get on chain as well. You know, it's still too hard to go from like fiat to crypto and have a really seamless experience there. And it's still too hard to do that in like every country around the world. And so thinking about solving those on-ramp problems is top of mind. I think you know, the cross-chain story is also one that's kind of challenging. The one that I'm thinking about a lot as well currently is sort of like address fragmentation, where people have a bunch of assets across a bunch of addresses, and how can we, you know, tell a better story there. But yeah, I think that it was sort of, you know, I've done some presentations for different teams on smart contract wallet, and you know, I like to put in like the Power Ranger meme of like everybody puts their fist in, and like it sort of was this like confluence of factors, yeah, where, you know, you had smart accounts before, but they were on L1 where everybody was really sensitive to gas, and so you sort of have L2s that solved the gas problem. You had 4337 that solved the problem of people needing to have an EOA as well. And then, you know, the passkey one is a really big part of it, and we've bet hard on passkeys, and there are pros and cons to it. We've certainly had friction where people are like, "Can you give us social login? Can you give us email login?" But I think passkeys are really special because it's, you know, it's an authentication format where users can get onboarded in seconds. It sort of, you know, can go up against the best onboarding experiences in terms of quickness and speed. But it's a really, really strong custody model where users still have custody of their own keys. It's not perfect because these are tied to domains. And so if that domain goes down, you can have trouble using it. And so we still have recovery keys, and we can talk about that. But, you know, I think that, you know, these keys and storing these keys has been one of the most vexing problems in crypto. And I sort of like to say, happens to be the case that you have these like billion-dollar companies that have spent a ton of time and energy solving these problems, right? Like Apple really, really does not want you to lose your iCloud account. They go to great lengths to make sure you don't lose it, because if you lose it, you lose everything. And so if we can sort of piggyback on that, then, you know, we can provide a better experience. And, you know, I tweeted a while ago, and, you know, I think Jesse agrees with this, and it was something that resonated. Like Steve Jobs talked about like picking technologies that are in their spring. You know, if you're only sort of can bet on a few things, betting on things that are in their spring. And I think that something that we're seeing in passkeys is just like quarter on quarter, they're just getting better and better. You know, these big companies are invested in making them better and better. There's a lot of interesting additions to the standard that are coming out where you can do like attaching blobs to them, and you can do like symmetric encryption and decryption with them. So I'm pretty pleased with that. And I think that was also a big part of the story. And I also just want to say we weren't the first to do that. You know, we benefited a bunch from the work that the open source work that the Demo team had done. And there's a lot of other people who had done passkeys with ZK proof. And so not at all to say we were the pioneer there, and we're happy to be able to build on the work that other people have done.
Okay, so I have a few questions, and I want to start with the smart wallet, just following up on what you said. Yeah, it's very easy user experience, like with passkeys too. Like you can just create a smart wallet in a few seconds, connect it to your Coinbase account, get started using. But I also want to talk about the other features which you have, like magic spend, like, you know, batch transactions. Can you talk a bit about like the like the extra features? Because it does actually bring your experience, like it's good both in like Web3, but also like a regular like Web2 e-commerce experience can actually be elevated by that. So can you talk about those features?
Yeah, there's really so much there, and I think that we still need to do a better job of like telling everybody about it, because we really launched like 5 major things at the same time. And I'm really proud of how we went about it, because we worked really with the community, and we looked at, okay, we want sponsored transactions. There's currently no RPC for an app to talk to a wallet about things like a paymaster. You have ETH send transaction, and we could sort of abuse that by adding in some extra fields, but it seemed like we wanted to align on something better. And similarly, there is no way for an app to talk to a wallet about a bundled transactions, ask it to do multiple operations in a single transaction. And so we, had one direction with like, we went through Ethereum Magician Forum, we talked to the Ethereum Foundation, we worked with a bunch of different people, and we ended up picking up an old EIP that had been there, EIP 5792. And we created this wallet send calls. And the calls have like, the basic fields. It's just like an array of calls with a to, a data, a value. And then we sort of tried to future-proof it by adding this capabilities field. And this capabilities is sort of like an open-ended dictionary where you can define capabilities in other ERCs. And so around the same time, we wrote a capability for sponsored transactions. So you could include a paymaster service capability. 5792 also specifies a wallet get capabilities RPC. So when you call to the wallet, when you connect, you can discover what capabilities that wallet has. And then when you send calls, you can use those. Another thing that you brought up is, Magic Spend. And so Magic Spend allows users to use their Coinbase balance on chain. And so most funding experiences sort of have a push model where you go to the funding website, you say how much money you want, they push it to your address, you wait, and then you do something else with it. We wanted people to feel like they could use their Coinbase assets on chain. And so the Magic Spend experience is more of a pull model. And in this case, the Coinbase backend can produce a signature that, yes, this user is allowed to pull these funds from our contract on chain. So on chain, we have a Magic Spend contract. You can kind of think of it as like a piggy bank that holds liquidity that Coinbase controls. And Coinbase gives people signatures to be able to pull that liquidity on chain. And so now in the checkout experience, a user comes in with some set of calls they want to make. And if they choose to pay for it from Coinbase, we pre-pen to that set of calls a Magic Spend call. And we get that signature from Coinbase. And this Magic Spend contract can provide funds during execution, but it also functions as a ERC-437 paymaster. And so this way you can pay for gas with those funds from Coinbase as well. And so you have this really cool experience now where users can start a transaction with zero in their account and do a whole transaction using Magic Spend. And this brought up other challenges. A lot of dApps block actions based on the balance they can see of your address on chain. So we wrote another capability, an auxiliary funds capability, where the wallet tries to tell the app, hey, I have funds that you don't know about, so don't block this user's action because I'm going to be able to get them funds at the time of transaction. And I think that this is solving a big problem for Ethereum, where you're going to have all these, cross-chain intents. Wallets are going to get more and more sophisticated, and there's a lot of teams that are going to need this to do what they want to do. In fact, we're seeing already like Socket and Zero Dev have continued iterating on the Magic Spend system and now have sort of a chain abstracted balance type thing. And they want to see this auxiliary fund capability widely adopted as well because it's blocking them. So I'm happy to answer more details on that. I realize I sort of talked about how we delivered it more than some of the specifics, but I'm really, really proud of how we went about that. And it was just looking at, okay, here's the blocker to delivering our experience. How can we deliver this in a way that's not just a one-off for us, but solving the problem for everyone to come, ideally?
And just to double click on one other thing was the Dymo team and their work on it's the R1 curve versus the K1 curve, right?
That's right.
And getting that on chain. Was that an EIP or is that just like writing the code and getting it done? I thought there was something about the R1 curve.
There is.
Was that the 4844 or when did the R1 come in?
So there's an RIP for it. RIP 7212, I believe. The Dymo team was part of getting that on chain. The Clav guys in particular pushed that pretty hard. But the Dymo team, I learned a lot from their code. We ended up using like FCL's library for chains that don't have the precompile. We still need a way to do that, and so we use fresh cryptolibs, and we audited that. But our WebAuthn thing built heavily upon what Dymo had done there. But yeah, I can talk more about the Paymaster or any details of that. If I sort of glossed over things that weren't clear, I'm happy to double click.
So no, it was a great intro. I especially like, shipping and then getting feedback, kind of going ahead and like making changes. But from like a non-dev perspective, so like as a regular like user, when I go ahead, I guess like what does it mean for like mainstream adoption? Like if I can use my wallet without seeing like, the gas payments, like what I pay.
Yeah.
What does it enable for mainstream users?
Yep. So I'm like, you asked about normal people, but I'm tempted to like give an technical answer again. I think it's helpful to understand a little bit that one of the problems with smart accounts before is that you had to have a smart account that was funded, and you also had to have an EOA that was funded to call into that smart account. And the idea of account abstraction is to allow people to primarily transact solely through their smart account. And 4.3.7 was sort of a way to like, let's fake this. We don't have this at the protocol level, but we can sort of give people the ability to only transact, or it's not faking it, but it's a meta transaction. It's above the protocol level. There's some thoughts to protocolize it, and the way it works is you have these parties called bundlers that basically front the gas for the smart accounts, and the bundlers call into the entry point, and the entry point makes sure that the smart account is going to pay the bundler back the gas that they're fronting for this transaction. The reason I'm saying this is it kind of gives you an intuition for, you've abstracted sort of the pieces of when exactly gas is paid. And so if the bundler can enforce that the smart account pays the gas, the bundler could also enforce that some third party pays the gas for the smart account. And that's why you introduce what we call paymasters. And paymasters might be, totally sort of benevolent and like paying gas for the user. And so we see some apps that give all their users like $10 of free gas, and that goes a long way on L2s. But they can also abstract the gas asset. And so if you want to pay gas in USDC, you can sort of pay this paymaster in USDC, and the paymaster can pay the bundler back in ETH for you. And so it unlocks these user experiences. I think one that we're particularly excited about is where sort of users start in an app with free transactions, and then they earn some app token, and then they start to use that app token to pay for gas, and then possibly they never pay for gas. And so Nick Prince and Chris Hunter and the Paymaster team at CDP have been doing, CDP is Coinbase development platform, have been doing an awesome job with that, and we've been excited to partner with them. So we just recently launched that ability to really give the ability was already there, but we sort of added some better UX in our transaction experience where it shows you which of your ERC20s is being used to pay for that transaction. But yeah, it sort of never gets old. We have this UI where it sort of shows like the gas price crossed out, and it says like sponsored by X, and we let the app say what they want in that message, and it's pretty cool.
That specific thing you were saying is like this was like always the dream all along for me when I was working on meta transaction stuff, was the user gets in and does something interesting and earns tokens, and then after they've like had the experience, built up the reputation, built up the token balance, then you start talking to them about crypto and what is backing here and how they recover things, but not until they've like had the experience with the app and either provided value to the app or the app has provided value to them. Like it's got to be that first, and then all the other crypto stuff later. And back in the day, it was like, no, you got to have a 12-word seed phrase in your sock drawer before you can even play the game. It was like, no, this is not it.
Yeah, totally. Cat Town is one that we're working closely with Block Lords, and they sort of have already implemented this model, which is pretty exciting.
So I kind of want to shift gears a bit and talk about the community aspect, which you talked before too, because I think it's very hard to build a sticky community, like people come, people go, but like having a developer group that's very passionate and actually building in the ecosystem is not easy at all. And you had like a very successful campaign with Onchain Summer. I think it was actually the second time you ran Onchain Summer. Was it the first? Like, um, how do you like keep developers in the ecosystem? Because grants are like very short term. But I feel like when you get developers in the ecosystem, like what are kind of like, how do you make sure that they're building with Base? Like, how do you kind of provide and that support loop for them?
Yeah, I can talk to this a bit. I definitely want to say up front though that there's a lot of people on the Base team that solely focus on this, and they do a great job. And so I don't want to pretend that I'm sort of masterminding any of this, or that I should get any credit for what's going well, or even that I know what's going on. But I can talk about it a little bit. I think that there's sort of two points of view, or two ways to break down like why somebody makes that choice. One is just more cultural values alignment of just like how many people was their first contact of like on-chain stuff with Base. How many people felt like they could, you can make it on Base is something I like to say. It's sort of you can build it on chain, you can make it on chain, and sort of the double meaning of you can make it, like you can, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. That sort of make it, but you can also build it. And so, who were the people that sort of had your back when you got started? And if people have that first point of contact of like that the Base team was there for them, when they needed it, that we were like, here's how you can build, here's the docs, we're here to support you, we're here to give you grants to help you succeed. And that it doesn't feel, transactional, but it feels like really values aligned, that we actually care, that we're actually invested in this mission, that it's not just like we're, saying these things because we want number to go up, but we actually care about these values of bringing the world on chain. So I think there's a lot of just values alignment that goes a long way, and people have some, brand preference, consumer preference. And then I think there's a lot of just like, how, tactically, how do we make sure that it's the best place for people to build? And so we work really hard to make sure that we have great infra providers, that all the infra providers that people want are there, that we have, great liquidity, that we're working with like all the best DeFi projects. Yeah, I think that all the things that they need to build on are there. And I think one example of this, of sort of like brass tacks type thing, when we started getting more usage and the fees started going up, we just started bumping the gas limit, because we were like, no, we're not here to make like these fees. We're here to bring the world on chain. And we know that you guys want cheap transactions. And so we've just been like bumping the gas limit and bumping the gas limit and bumping the gas limit. And, now the fees are super, super low. And I think that's just like something people appreciate when they want to build. So yeah, I think I would sort of just break it into those two buckets, and we try to work really hard on both of them.
I definitely want to get into the gas stuff, because I definitely have a question there that I don't understand how it works. But let me go back real quick.
I might not be able to answer you, because there's a lot.
No. I know you will. But backing up, also, this isn't a question; it's more of a statement. But all my questions have been like half statements, half questions here. But Ethereum to me is kind of like, and a lot of people have said this. This isn't my word, but like a shepherding ecosystem, where you kind of need a shepherd. You said that first contact at base, like you kind of need a shepherd, someone to ask the stupid questions to. Do you agree? Is that like maybe even part of the strategy here? Is like, hey, this is a really hard technology, and to bring people on chain, we need to have like shepherds that are helping people like get on chain. Is that true in your circles? Is that true?
I think that it's an interesting frame. I think that there's probably some truth to it. I guess I'm always thinking about how much better we could be doing, and so I think that we've done pretty well so far. We have like an amazing, Discord community, and the managers there are amazing. Like Will Binns is a community manager who's really great. Jesse's obviously amazing. We also have a lot of great partners who have, produced great content for people to get on chain, and thinking about like Third Web and anybody producing content for helping developers, and those people have been great partners to us as well. I think that my head is in sort of like the things I want to change to our docs next week, so I'm thinking mostly about how much better it could be, how hard it still is. But yeah, I think you're right that, people, a shepherd is one word. And I think people also want a sponsor to some degree. I think that, I sometimes joke about Base being sort of like Coinbase affiliated people retweets as a service or something, like if you're building on Base, there's a chance that like a bunch of us are gonna hype it up, and that for a lot of people is really meaningful, that they build something and we help them find an audience. And I think that's an important part of what we do.
It's always a huge win if Jesse comments based on your comment.
Right, exactly.
You put a tweet and you get based from Jesse, it's like, that's it. I'm done. I'm done working for the day. I've done it.
Yeah, exactly. We go home.
So the shepherds aren't just shepherds, I think, in your community. I think they're also like cool. And I think that's an important part, where like the shepherds of the past have been nerds in the basement running their nodes, trying to bring their friends on to validate. And now it's like these cool California kids that are like building apps that have culture in them. So I also want to like double click on Farcaster and how maybe that's also a cool shepherding kind of ecosystem that's helped bolster your crew. You think so?
The Farcaster is amazing, and I think it's funny that like so many people think the Farcaster is like built on Base or runs on Base. It works on all kinds of chains. They just happen to drive a bunch of activity in Base because we have a really strong community there. And I think that it's not by accident. Again, it's sort of just like it helps to have a strategy. Just like we saw Farcaster as a really important place to be, and in particular the Frames moment. When Frames came out, there was sort of like a crazy weekend where I think, Jesse and some others saw like this is super important. We have to move on this right now. And I think that I was thinking back, I mean, I don't know if this maps, but I think that a lot of like the big successful run in terms of numbers that Base has had, in my memory, a lot of that kicked off with the big Farcaster moment. And so I think, it doesn't happen by accident, but it was sort of planned and sort of like, preparation meets opportunity equals success. That's a line from my dad that I get at New Year's. I think there's a lot of preparation for like, we're ready for, we believe in Farcast, we're ready to invest there. And then like, okay, they just dropped something new and we think it's there and we're going to be ready to support these builders and pouring a ton of time and energy into it. And it's just like, it's hard. It's like, it's, some people don't want to spend their weekend, going through Farcaster tweets and writing based on everything and like pumping people up and being there to support people and debugging stuff. It's just like, it's a ton of work. But yeah, to the extent it's working, I think that's, part of it. And we have now a bunch of great channels there. We have the grants channel, or I can't remember what it's called. Weekly. I can't remember. I'm going to get in trouble for forgetting, but Kabir does a great job with that. And then we have the base channel. And so, yeah, we have an awesome set of community managers there. And it's really, a thoughtful planning behind making that happen.
The frames moment, I think, showed what composability actually means in Web3. I think a lot of Web3 social was all like, they were talking about composability, but really they became these isolated kind of like places that didn't really lean into composability. Frames was like, no, this is how composability really will work. Like everyone gets to create their own little hypercard app, and it like is going to be displayed in line with the rest of the app. So I think that like opened the floodgates in terms of thinking more composable with Web3 and social. And you guys don't like Web3 either. You guys like on-chain, which I think is a brilliant strategy also, by the way. But
yeah,
no question there. No question there. We got to get over the chain. I got to ask my chain question here. Okay. We're switching. We're transitioning to chain now. 4844 comes out. Blobs are cheaper. I deployed a smart contract at ETH London and it was like 2 cents and everyone in the room like lit up and it was so much fun. My question is, what are you balancing? I always see that where it's like, okay, we're bumping up the gas limit. What are the factors there? You're looking at usage and block size and gas cost and trying to have the gas cost correct. Is that what's happening there?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think to some extent, a lot of the constraint that we're trying to balance is really on like machine size and making sure that we kind of don't go down. And a lot of that is challenges around what's the composition of the transactions in each block and how like, database intensive or memory intensive are those transactions. And then our community as well, the people who are operating nodes, what sort of hardware do they have? What are they able to keep up with? But yeah, I mean, basically we're just looking at the base fee growth and congestion. How much is congestion driving fees up on chain, and we want to make sure that it's pretty minimal. And that's sort of when we first, for a long time, the L1 costs were driving it. Then we had 4844 land, and now the L2 costs were landing it. And this was sort of funny actually, because I was in the midst of, writing these smart contracts, and they were really optimized for minimizing call data costs. And then call data costs immediately became extremely cheap. And so that was kind of some of that I couldn't change at that point, and that was kind of funny. But yeah, we started to see congestion. The fees were going up because there was so much demand for block space. And so again, there's actually a few different parameters, and it's embarrassing that I don't know better, but Roberto has like explained it to me a couple times. And it's not just about purely bumping like the number of transactions that you can have in a block, although we are starting to do some of that as well. You're adjusting sort of your target inclusion number of transactions and some of the incentive fees on there, the base fees, and how quickly some of those fees grow. But yeah, I should have like one of Roberto's work past threads on it. But that's sort of been, I've really been focused on the smart wallet stuff for the last 12 months, and we sort of have our core protocol group. So I get updates from them. Like I get to hear their updates weekly, but I don't always have great insight into the details.
I do follow quite a few people from Coinbase, so I get the updates on my Twitter.
There you go.
And it's nice to, it's nice to follow along. So I kind of want to talk about on-chain kits, because you build like smart wallets, you build like different functionalities, but you also make it easy for devs, like React devs, to go ahead and use it. So can you talk a bit about what on-chain kit is and how you're kind of thinking about apps being built on Base, because you need to have like apps being built to have like the chain actually being used. And
Yeah.
I feel like you're making it very easy with all the tools being used. And one of them is OnChainKit. So I'll hand it over to you to kind of give a pitch of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and once again, it's a thing that's like I get to work with the team that builds OnChainKit. I'm not the product lead for it. I wasn't even a primary builder on it, but excited that we're working on it. You can think of OnChainKit, if you've used like WagMe or sort of higher level, React or Vue type. Well, actually, OnChainKit is just focused on React right now, so we can talk about that. Giving you React hooks and stuff for Ethereum. This is sort of one level on top of that. And so this is like actually giving you components to build your apps. And so you now have like a transaction component that will give you a button and, all these code that Austin and I have written a bunch of million times, or I'm not sure if you've written this as well, but you're like, oh, you rejected the transaction failed on chain. Like all these states, we sort of have like one button where you can just put our transaction button in your page. You can just say the calls that you want to make. You can say the paymaster that you want to use, and we sort of handle the rest of it. Or, how many times have people built a wallet drop-down component? We have a wallet drop-down component where you can see your base name and you can, you can click funds to fund your address. And so, yeah, it's about building, higher and higher level abstractions for people to interact with. And, I like to think about like an interesting metric for OnChainKit is like, what's the GDP of like OnChainKit apps, or how many, people talk about like one-person billion-dollar companies with AI, and I think people forget or sometimes don't appreciate how high leverage crypto is as well. And you have teams like Uniswap that were 10 people when they launched UniV3 and handling billions of dollars of volume. And so how many $1 million processing websites have been built with purely just OnChainKit components with no extra adjustment needed. They just dropped in like 4 components and they had their site working. And yeah, the goal is, as we launch new features, that we have these ready to use components for people to just use them super simply, and it doesn't take a bunch of work.
It's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I kind of started with like a hackathon starter kit, and I wanted it to be really easy to just ship a hackathon, because I would go to a hackathon and I'd spend the first 8 hours getting my stack
Right.
ready and making an address component and an address input component and having the little blocky preview. But this is a testament to Base, and almost like you talked about this earlier about maturity and strategy. It was probably 9 months ago, maybe it was longer. I went to a Dymo meetup and I saw Jesse there, and I was like, "Hey, OnChainKit is very similar to Scaffold ETH. We should like work together." And he's like, "Do you have a swap component?" And I immediately thought of like the 4 times I tried to get a swap component going, and like I make a little grant, someone sort of works on it but doesn't get it done. The swap component was so like important to Jesse, and it got in. Like if you go to OnChainKit now, you can grab a easy React component that will let you do a swap. And in fact, you can also start with the token selector component that comes with the OnChainKit. Select DGen, and then that shows up in your swap, and then you can swap USD to DGen. Like Eda and I did this in we were like in a hotel in Tokyo in the lobby, and we brought OnChainKit into Scaffold ETH, and like within 15 minutes, I was buying DGen with USDC live on mainnet with an app that we had built. And that was the moment where I was like, shit, there's no way we can keep up with these guys. Like, that's so cool though. Like, again, I don't really have a huge question here. And my thing is more about like, this is so awesome that you guys are moving toward this, and so many things are coming together for builders, not just the network, not just the wallet, but also like this environment that makes it really easy for a dev to have an idea and be able to focus on building that idea and not have to worry about getting all the like pieces wired together. So maybe the question might be, what's next for OnChainKit? Do you know like what else they're building or what's new? Like what's the next thing they're going to beat us to?
Yeah. I think that's a great story. And I mean, before I answer that question, I think it speaks to, people know Jesse as somebody who works super hard and know him as a hype man, but I think it's underappreciated how really technically brilliant Jesse is and how prescient he is. He really has great insight and taste on what is going to be important and what's not going to be important. And it's very fun to work with him in that way. And I think he had really early intuitions for how OnChainKit was going to be important and what parts of it were going to be important. So yeah, and it's fun, it sometimes feels slow, like, oh, we've only got like these 2 components, but it's sort of these things stack, you get a couple components, then you keep going, and it's one of those sort of slow is smooth, smooth is fast type of things. I can talk about a component that we launched yesterday that I'm really, really excited about. So this is a collaboration between us, Onchain Kit, and the commerce team. And, this is really, thinking about what we talked about earlier, that we're in the end game, and our goal is for Smart Wallet to be the first choice for devs building value moving apps on the internet. Full stop. I don't care if you're selling t-shirts. I don't care if you're selling NFTs. If you're, moving value around, Smart Wallet, I want it to be the best developer tool for you. And the tool that we launched is basically a checkout component from Onchain Kit, where you can add in your Coinbase Commerce. Basically, it integrates with Coinbase Commerce, and so when you go to the checkout page, it's going to get the product ID from your Coinbase Commerce page that you've set up. It's going to pull the price info in. It's going to create a transaction. We actually have a really simplified transaction view for this. So if a transaction is using USDC only and not doing any other approvals or asset movements, it just simplifies to pay X, Y USDC. There's no gas, there's no network, there's no anything. And then when you make that transaction, Commerce processes that for you. And, it says, okay, you've now done a sale, and you can track the sale of that with Commerce in the way that you're used to. And Commerce has off-ramp tools and all those things that benefit from it. So that's, one thing that we're excited about, making it easier and easier for merchants to use crypto and use Smart Wallet. One other thing that we're excited about is, doing subscription type stuff. If we can unlock subscription use cases as well. That's something that we're looking at. I think Onchain Kit today just launched a mint component maybe for NFTs. So I'm not aware of all that's on the roadmap, but ideally just sort of knocking down one by one what are sort of the things that everybody has to build for their app and make those better and better.
Yeah, I saw the video for the checkout. It was very impressive. And I kind of want to, this was a nice intro to a lot of stuff which you can do to build on Base as well. But also for anyone listening and most people in crypto, I do think that Base and Coinbase also, not just Base specifically, but any kind of department in Coinbase is a very attractive place. And I know so many people want to work at Base. So I'd be curious about how do you think about hiring? If I'm a developer or any not even a technical person, listening to this, what advice would you have for someone who wants to work at Coinbase?
Yeah, we hire really carefully. I think we've done a really good job of holding a very high bar, and I'm now super, super happy with our team. It's an amazingly talented group of people to work with. We really model sort of the Coinbase, or believe in the Coinbase ethos of a championship team, and so we want to work with people who want to win, and not win and we beat other people, but want to win, and we want to accomplish our mission. We want to bring the world on chain, and we're going to work really, really hard to get there. And so I would say, first of all, that I don't think it's for everybody. It's not for everybody in every season. I think it is a very high intensity place, and people care a lot about the work. I don't think it's masochistic. We're not trying to stay up all night or anything, but we do push very hard. And at certain times we do have to, work those Saturdays, work those late nights. I think that, it's, less talk, less talking, more shippy is something that we like to say. If you're building, if you want to, support from us as a builder outside of the team, if you want to join our team, we want to see what you've built. We don't want to hear about what you want to build or what you might build. We want to see what you've built. And so just, start building, start, delivering value. I've been particularly focused on building out our smart contract team. I think now there was a time where we got down to basically just me as the only smart contract official sort of smart contract engineer at Coinbase. And we now have a great team, and sort of I was a part of hiring all of those people that are now in that role. And so, yeah, I think, it's a rising bar for the smart contract side. I think that Solidity has been so new that for a while it was sort of a lower bar of can you do something really simple? Do you understand how these things work? And now, our bar in other categories of the interview for our interns is can you make some game in 40 minutes, or can you code some, I don't know, file system, whatever. I'm not sure what our interviews are now for those things, but So I think that I'm seeing that in our Solidity interviews now as well, where it's not just enough to sort of know how to write a smart contract. We're looking for, at the senior level, we're looking for people who have led, taking protocols through audit before, have written, complex pieces of code, people who have, opinions, who have taste on how things should work, how things should be organized, what's the way to do things. I think having familiarity with like EIPs and ERCs is a really big strategic asset. There's a ton of them out there, but there's probably like 20 or so, honestly, that if you're a Solidity engineer, you should know. I've thought of trying to enumerate those in a list and publish them. I'm sure somebody could do a better job than me. But yeah, otherwise I would say, there's no secret. We're always, we want to hire great people who, we look for base culture. We talk about base culture, just working hard, doing the right thing, being humble, and that's what we look for. And so if you're, somebody who has an intense, if you're great at what you do, if you care about your craft, if you embody those characteristics, we definitely want to talk to you.
Heck yeah. And to triple down on my making statements instead of questions, if I was a builder right now, I personally would take Scaffold ETH with the on-chain kit extension.
There you go.
And I give my users smart contract wallets right up front. I deploy on Base. I do gas sponsorships, and I'd have some app that is somehow engaging in a way that gets users to just use it and start either collecting something, whether that's reputation or a token or something else, and do something valuable for the user first, and everything else will come together there. Yep. So, okay, now here's the question. We got to close it out, but we talked about so many exciting things here. Have we hit on everything? Like, what are you excited about personally? Like, what gets you up in the morning? What are you after?
Yeah, it's the team for me. I think that, you look at goals of like, the dream is to sort of work on something it's sort of actionable, it's motivating, it's clear. And there's a lot of times that are they're motivating, but you can't really take action on them right now, or they're not clear. Maybe they're clear, but they're not really motivating. They're not that exciting. And so I think you sort of said we're in the end game, and there's sort of this like cornucopia of like all these amazing, interesting things to work on. It's just like, there's so many things that I want to deliver. And my favorite thing is just like working with a team to get there, are helping, I'm sort of now acting in this sort of DRI product lead role for this project, and helping give the team that clarity and that motivation, and then serving the team any way I can to get there. And so it's like, here's where we're trying to go, right? Like, we want to be the express checkout for every app on the web, right? We want to win value moving apps online. Here's how we're going to get there. Let's go get it, and then fighting every battle along the way of like, every day there's going to be things that come up that want to distract you, that want to tear you off path. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be these things that you have to communicate. And so, but that's what I love, when you have a group of people with a motivating goal that's clear, that's actionable, and with a chance of actually getting there, and then just going as hard as you can for it. Yeah. I love that process.
Okay, so we're almost coming to the end. But Wilson, thank you so much. It was very nice to like question you for an hour. I think I resonated with so many of your answers, and there's so many like nice follow-ups which people can do if they're interested. Like basically just trying out the new stuff that come out, sharing what they're building, actually going in and like shipping instead of just talking. So I kind of want to give the last word to you to say like where people can find you. And yeah, thanks again for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm online. I'm pretty much everywhere at Wilson Cusack. So you can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Discord or whatever. Happy to talk to you if I can be helpful.